When 68-year-old Martha spent her last $20 to save a dying cat, she never imagined the wealthy recluse watching from across the street would offer her something far more precious than money. The rain poured down like heaven's tears on the quiet streets of Boston. Martha Jenkins, 68 years young but feeling every one of those years today, shuffled carefully along the slippery sidewalk. Her floral umbrella threatened to turn inside out with every gust of wind, and her grocery bag containing just a loaf of bread and a small container of milk felt heavier with each step. The arthritis in her hands throbbed, but she tightened her grip. These groceries had to last until her Social Security check arrived next week. As she passed the alley behind the old bakery, the one that always smelled faintly of cinnamon, even in the rain she heard it, a sound so soft it barely registered over the drumming rain. A weak, pitiful mewl. Martha stopped, leaning against the damp brick wall to catch her breath. There it was again. Straining her eyes through the downpour, she spotted a lump of soggy fur huddled beneath a soggy cardboard box. A cat, no, a kitten shivering violently, one paw twisted at an unnatural angle. "Oh, you poor dear," Martha whispered, her heart lynching. Without thinking, she knelt on the wet pavement, ignoring the cold seeping through her thin slacks. The kitten, a tiny calico, looked up with eyes clouded with pain. Its matted fur bore the telltale greasiness of long neglect. Martha's hand shook as she fished out her last $20 bill from her worn wallet. The money she'd set aside for her blood pressure medication. "Come now, sweetheart," she cooed, wrapping the kitten in her scarf. The pharmacy 3 blocks away had a veterinary section. She could make it. Had to make it. Every hurried step sent sharp pains through her swollen knees. But Martha focused on the kitten as shallow breaths against her chest. When she burst into the store, dripping and breathless, the young cashier's eyes widened. "Please," Martha gasped, placing the 20 on the counter with trembling fingers. "The antibiotics, the pain pills, whatever this can buy." Her voice broke as the kitten emitted another weak cry. Across the street, unnoticed by anyone, the tinted window of a black Rolls-Royce rolled down just an inch. A pair of weary blue eyes watched the scene unfold. Inside the luxury car, Harrison Whitmore heavily gripped the armrest until his knuckles turned white. He hadn't meant to stop here, hadn't he meant to stop anywhere. His driver was simply taking the long way home from yet another pointless board meeting when the rain forced them to slow down. But now he couldn't look away from the elderly woman cradling that broken creature like it was the most precious thing in the world. "Pull over, Charles," Harrison ordered, his voice rougher than intended. At 72, he'd built an empire worth billions, yet hadn't he felt truly alive since Claire passed. 5 long years, 5 years of empty rooms and emptier conversations. But this woman, the way she'd sacrificed her last dollars without hesitation, it stirred something long buried. Through the rain-streaked window, Harrison watched as the pharmacist shook his head. The woman, Martha, he'd heard her say, sagged against the counter, still clutching the kitten. Without thinking, Harrison pulled out his phone. "Get me Dr. Emily Torres now." His personal assistant started to ask questions. "Just do it," Harrison snapped, surprising himself. By the time the renowned veterinarian arrived in her white lab coat, Harrison had watched Martha rock back and forth on a plastic chair for 43 excruciating minutes. He noted how she kept whispering to the kitten even as her own hands trembled with exhaustion. When Dr. Torres knelt to examine the calico, Martha's face transformed, those deep worry lines smoothing into tentative hope. "She's going to need surgery," the vet said gently. Martha's shoulders slumped. Harrison's throat tightened. Before he realized what he was doing, he'd opened the car door. The rain soaked his $3,000 suit instantly. "Charles, bring my checkbook," he barked over his shoulder. For the first time in years, Harrison Whitmore actually walked towards something instead of away. The fluorescent lights of the animal clinic hummed like anxious bees as Martha sat in the sterile waiting room. Midnight had come and gone, but she refused to leave, not while Little Patches, she'd named the kitten after the pharmacy where they'd met, fought for her life in surgery. The vinyl chair creaked as Martha shifted, her knees protesting the long vigil. She didn't notice the distinguished gentleman sitting stiffly 2 seats over until he cleared his throat. "She is in good hands," Harrison said, staring straight ahead at the Adopt-A-Tea shop poster on the wall. "Dr. Torres is the best." When Martha turned to him with red-rimmed eyes, he finally met her gaze. Up close, she noticed the deep loneliness in those blue eyes, a mirror of her own. "Why?" she asked simply. "Why help a stranger?" Harrison looked down at his gold offlinks, suddenly ashamed of their shine. "Because you reminded me that some things still matter," he murmured. Just then, the surgery door swung open. Both elderly hearts skipped a beat as Dr. Torres emerged, her surgical mask pulled down. "She is a fighter," the vet announced, smiling warily. "The leg is set. The infection is draining," and Martha didn't hear the rest. She pressed both hands to her mouth as tears streamed down her weathered cheeks. Harrison discreetly wiped his own eyes. When Martha reached for his hand, he didn't pull away. Dawn was breaking when they finally left the clinic, Martha clutching the carrier containing a sleeping Patches. Harrison's driver opened the car door for them both. "Where to?" "Ma'am," Charles asked gently. Martha hesitated, then named her modest apartment complex. Harrison surprised everyone by saying, "I'll ride along." As the car glided through the pink-streaked morning, neither noticed they were still holding hands. 1 week later, Martha's tiny apartment smelled of fresh coffee and the lavender-scented shampoo she'd used to bathe Patches. The kitten, now sporting a bright pink cast, hopped around the kitchen, chasing a ball of yarn. Martha smiled as she poured coffee for her unexpected guest. Harrison sat awkwardly at her formica table, his large frame seeming to fill the entire studio apartment. "This is nice," he lied, eyeing the peeling wallpaper. Martha chuckled. "It is a dump, Mr. Whitmore." He winced. "Please, call me Harry," the nickname Clara used, the one no one had spoken in 5 years. Patches jumped into Harry's lap, purring loudly. He stiffened at first, then began stroking her fur with surprising gentleness. "She likes you," Martha observed. Harry cleared his throat. "Martha, I have a proposal." He pulled out an envelope with trembling hands. Inside were adoption papers for Patches, along with something else, a deed to a cottage on his estate. "I know this seems sudden," he rushed on, "but that apartment's stairs were too steep. And his voice broke, "I am tired of being alone." Martha stared at the papers, then at the vulnerable billionaire in her kitchen. "What are you asking, Harry?" He stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his coffee. "Come live with me. Both of you, not as anything improper, just." His face reddened. "As family." Patches headbutted his hand, demanding more pets. Martha looked around her shabby home, then at the hopeful man before her. "Well," she said softly, "someone needs to teach you how to make proper coffee." Harry's shocked laugh filled the room, the first real joy the house had heard in years. The rose garden at Whitmore Estate bloomed in riotous color as Martha sat on the porch swing. Patches curled in her lap. 6 months had transformed them all. The kitten, now a sleek cat who ruled the mansion. Harry's stern face softened by frequent smiles, and Martha felt young again. She hummed as she rocked, watching Harry carefully prune his prized roses. Who knew the fearsome tycoon had a green thumb? "Mail came," Harry announced, joining her on the swing. His hand shook slightly as he handed her an envelope from Martha. Harry's Second Chance Foundation. Inside were photos of their first successful rescue, a 3-legged beagle named Dodger, now adopted by a sweet elderly couple like themselves. Martha squeezed Harry's hand. "We did good." Later, as the sunset painted the sky in gold and violet, they gathered in the kitchen, Harry stirring soup, his one culinary skill, Martha baking cornbread, and Patches supervising from the windowsill. The room filled with warmth and the comfortable silence of two people who'd found their way home. "You know," Harry said suddenly, "Clara would have loved you." Martha paused, flour dusting her apron. "And George would be approved of you," she replied. They smiled at each other, two widows who'd thought their stories were over, now writing a new chapter together. That night, as fireflies danced outside, Martha found Harry in the library reading to Patches, a ridiculous sight that made her heart swell. Without a word, she settled beside them. The cat purred, the fire crackled, and somewhere beyond the garden walls, another stray waited to be found by someone who'd learned that love always finds a way, even in life's twilight years.